All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be recording this episode. We have Sarah Hagstrom here. Sarah, I'm so excited that you're here because I think this topic is going to be so beneficial for so many people listening, especially people who are just getting started with their business or even like kind of entertaining that idea. So I want to take a few minutes and just have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and who you primarily work with, and then we'll jump into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, that sounds so good. I'm so excited to be here too. I'm a big fan of your podcast, so this is a treat for me as well. So I help usually it's health coaches. That's what I started out doing. So I help health coaches, wellness coaches, create and sell programs so that they can go full-time online. So a lot of my clients are wanting to do their own thing. They're wanting freedom. They're wanting to help people get healthier. A lot of them have made transformations in their own life and they want to help people do the same thing. And so for me, before becoming a business coach, I was a plant-based weight loss coach. So I helped women lose weight on a plant-based diet. I went plant-based. It changed my life. I was obsessed with it and I wanted to help other people do that. And so I started doing that. And then that led into me helping other people kind of have like my clients ended up getting healthier, becoming health coaches. And then they're like, wait, how do I do this full time? All of these blocks came up. Confidence was a big thing. And so I started helping them do that. So that is what I do now, full time for my business.
Awesome. So would you say you're a business coach now, but you started off as a health coach?
Yep.
So what was that transition like for you? Like right from like when you first started this, were you like, my end goal is to be a business coach? No?
No, not at all. And I've written about this on my Instagram. I was like, I never thought that I would be a business coach. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to be a business coach. And I still am, have always been obsessed with health, and really like how that happened was very organically. And I think, that's kind of how like a lot of businesses form, is like organically, just kind of like going through the motions and trusting the process. And so for me, I transitioned probably 2 years ago now into business coaching full time. And before that, I'd been health coaching for a little over 5 years. And what happened 2 years ago was I was helping one of my clients. And this is something a lot of my clients who are health coaches kind of freak out about, is sometimes they'll have health coaches like buy their course or their program and they'll be like, is she trying to copy me? And I'm like, relax. Because just because you're a health coach doesn't mean that you have it all figured out. Doesn't mean that you don't need a coach, right? Just like me, for me, I have a business coach, even though I am a business coach, right? Like we all need support. We all need coaches. And so I was doing health coaching and one of my clients was a health coach and she wanted to go plant-based, right? She was a health coach, but she wasn't plant-based. And she was like, I see what you're doing. I want to go plant-based. I'm feeling called towards that. And so I was helping her and she ended up losing 20 pounds, was feeling great. And she's like, okay, now can you help me with my business? I want to do what you're doing. And I was like, I don't know about that. And she was like, at the time I had a membership site for women. I was doing in-person retreats. I was just doing all of these things. And so she's like, will you help me? And of course, like I only work with clients I love. So of course, like my clients have me wrapped around their finger. I'm like, sure, like fine, I'll do it. And I ended up really liking it. Like my husband, he works for our business full time and he has too. He's a health coach and now he does like the tech for other health coaches. And he would hear me and he was like, you were so loud and like excited. Like, who were you talking to? Like, what were you talking about? I was like, oh, I was like actually doing like the business coaching session. He's like, wow, like you must really like it. And I was like, I kind of do. Like, it's pretty fun. And that client, she ended up being able to leave her job in 6 months and go full time. So I actually was pretty freaking good at it. And I was like, wow, like maybe I should do this more. And so I kind of just slowly started doing that more and more.
That's awesome. I love that. And I can tell even just the way that you're talking about this story, like how excited that like pivot or transformation must have been for you.
It was really fun when I kind of had that light bulb moment of like, oh, maybe I should be doing this more. Maybe this is like the next step for me. And that's kind of like the person I am. Like, I like a challenge. I always tell my friends when I'm going through change, like 3 years ago, we moved to Maui and that was like the biggest challenge of my life so far. It was so challenging. And I was telling my friends, like, I was like, gosh, like, why do I always have to go through all these changes and challenges? Like, I hate this. And they're like, no, you don't. You love it. Like you create this. You love a challenge. You love a change. Like you're all about it. And so when I pivoted, it was very exciting, but there were definitely some challenges and some things that I think a lot of us kind of go through when we're changing, when we're trying something new. I had a lot of self-doubt. Like, who am I to do this? I remember being like, at first when I was like, okay, now I'm going to put this out to my entire list and see who else might be interested in doing business coaching while I was doing health coaching. And I remember thinking like, am I crazy? Like, who's going to want to work with me? At the time, I was probably making like $10,000 to $13,000 a month as a health coach, which is great, which is amazing. But there are millionaires teaching people how to grow their business. So I was like, who's going to want to work with little old me when there are literally people that's what they do, you know, full time. They're not health coaches and like business coaching on the side. They're business coaches full time. And so I had that come into my head, which I hear from a lot of my clients. And I really had to work through that. And that was definitely challenging because I had been health coaching for so long. I think when you do something for so long, you get really comfortable in it, right? You're confident and you kind of forget what it's like to be a beginner at something. And I always tell my clients, when you're just starting out with your business, just starting out with something, that's the hardest, right? Because you've never done it before. You got to build up that confidence in yourself. You got to get the skill. You got to become a master at it. But once you get past that, it does get a lot easier.
Yeah. So how did you work through maybe stepping into an industry that, I don't know, people say this all the time, like this industry is so saturated, or there's so many people doing this, or even like my best friend does this. How am I supposed to do this? Like, is that going to be, am I stepping on our toes? Like, how do you navigate that if you're deciding to pivot or even just starting an online business in general?
Yes, that's such a great question. So the thing that I had to wrap my head around and that I teach my clients to is to remember that you are the only one of you. And I know that gets thrown around so much, but it's so true. And what I've really seen in my business is when I started sharing what I've been through, my life experiences, my personality, and really showing up as myself, like quirky things, personal things, weird things, that started drawing in my community and my audience, and people wanted to work with me, for that. They're like, so like one thing that I share often is I grew up in a really dysfunctional family. Both of my parents are alcoholics, like just had me when they were really young. And I share that a lot. And I'm pretty open about that. And a lot of my ideal clients are like, I grew up in that situation too. I struggle with not being enough because of that too. And so they're drawn to me for that. Another thing with health coaching is a lot of my clients are plant-based, or they're really into whole foods or juicing. And I'm really into that too. And I post about it in my stories, even though I'm not health coach. This is, you know, my green juice in the morning. And people will be like, oh my gosh, I drink green juice too, you know, and they're like, I want to work with Sarah because she prioritizes business, but she also prioritizes her health. And I connect to that. I relate to that. So that's one thing that it can be kind of scary to do. Put yourself out there, share what you've been through, share your stories, but really that is what sets you apart from other people. And what I've found is no matter if somebody else is offering what I'm offering, or if maybe I'm charging more than somebody else, people still will sign up to work with me because they've gotten to know me and they like me and they trust me. And I think that's really important. And if you can do that, then you're not competing with other people who have the same program as you, because nobody can be the same person as you.
Yes. Okay. I love that you said that, Sarah, because you just gave an example of a story that you talk about and a way that you relate to your audience, and then they become your clients, obviously. And it had nothing to do with your, like, what you're actually speaking about. Like your family dynamic had nothing to do with your
Yeah.
expertise in health or business or whatever. It's just people tend to build that trust through the stories and the connections and the experiences that we've gone through.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, like I always say, like you have to be helping the people with the thing that they want help with, right? You have to be solving a problem. But a lot of times where the sales happens, where the connection happens is through the story, right? A lot of times what has people reaching out to be like, hey, I want to work with you is not like, hey, here's my great program. Like, here's how I can help you with your business, which I do those. But usually it's like, hey, this is what my life was like before I went into business for myself. And like, it was a hot mess, you know, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in that spot right now too. Like, can you help me? You know, it's something that's completely unrelated to business, because at the end of the day, I think now more than ever, people want to work with people that they like, that they connect with, people who they feel like care about them, right? And we all have that capacity if we're willing to open up and share the real truth.
Yes, 100%. And I also think a lot of people get so hung up on, I need to have this, or I need to be, I mean, you should be certified if there's something that should be a certification requirement. But in so many cases, people use that as like a crutch or something that like they use that as a hesitation before putting themselves out there. And I love how you're just saying like, you don't need that in order to be able to have a connection and book a client.
Yes, 100%. I think a lot of times, I think we think that the certification is gonna give us the confidence, right? It's gonna give us more confidence if we're certified, if we have more experience. But literally, you get more experience from doing the work, from showing up, right? That is really what has boosted my confidence, is working with more people, helping more people. And that's another thing that I would say, if you're like, oh, my best friend's doing this or this person's doing this, instead of focusing on, you know, the certification, instead of focusing on all the other people doing it, focus on how you can give value, how you can help your person. And if you focus on that, you'll get out of your own head. You know, a lot of my clients will be like, and I can relate to so much of like their concerns. One of their big concerns is like how I sound. They're like, I don't like how I sound on video. I don't like how I look on video. I don't like how I sound on audio either. I have a freaking podcast, right? The reason that I do, I'm on a podcast right now. The reason that I do it is because it's valuable and it helps somebody else. So instead of thinking like, oh, I look silly or I said something stupid, start thinking about, will this help my person, right? Will this help who I'm here to help? And when you do that, you kind of take yourself out of the equation and you stop focusing so much on how you look, how you sound, you know, what you have. And when you put it on other people pay attention. They see that you're there to help them and they start reaching out to you, and you really start gaining that traction. And that in turn increases your confidence. There's nothing better, in my opinion, than when somebody reaches out and it was like, oh my gosh, that video you posted, it helped me. It changed my life. Here's how it did. That is like what keeps me going, right?
Yes. So the confidence is coming from you actively showing up. The credentials or the certifications don't give you that confidence, because once you reach that, then you're going to have a new layer of an insecurity or a fear or something that's like, okay, well, I have all this knowledge behind me. I have the education, but now I have to go and put myself out on video, but I hate the way my voice sounds. And that's another thing that's going to keep holding you back. So showing up and putting yourself out there is like the number one thing that people say too, is like, start before you're ready. Like, you just have to do it. And then the thing that you said about taking yourself out of the equation, I know for me, when I was working with my first business coach, I forget what I was even concerned about, but it is such a real concern because I've been through it too. And my business coach was like, this might be your ego talking. Like, remember why you started, why you want to do this, and like remove yourself, like you said, from that equation. And even still, like now, whenever I get a message from someone saying that something that I've put out there has changed their life or whatever, I screenshot it and I have an album, because I'm like, there's going to be moments, I think, in any entrepreneurship's journey where they're questioning themselves, they're doubting themselves, they're feeling uncertain. And I go back to those messages and I'm like, no, this is the reason that I'm here. This is the reason I'm doing something.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that you screenshot that. Those are great for yourself. Those are also great for testimonials. So definitely save those babies. I do something very similar. So I have a big whiteboard in my office, and every day I write down my wins. And wins can literally be anything. Like, my clients give me such a hard time because literally, like, waking up and the sun is out, that's a win some days, right? I'll write down my client wins when they sign clients. I'll write down like a good movie that I watched as a win, because I don't remember who said this, but I remember somebody saying this probably in a mindset book. I love mindset books. The more you celebrate your wins, the more things you have to celebrate, right? So that also increases your confidence, celebrating everything that's going right and really taking your focus. And I think a lot of us, because we're not taught, you know, to celebrate our wins, right? To focus on the good, a lot of us have to like retrain our brains, reprogram ourselves to focus on all of the things that are going right versus the things that are going wrong. I did a podcast with somebody else recently about haters, right? And trolls and people who say mean things on the internet, because that's real, that happens. And it's so crazy because somebody can say like one mean thing and you can get like 20 really great messages and you focus on that one negative thing. So you really have to retrain your brain. And I think, creating an album like you do of screenshots, testimonials. I have like cards clients have sent me, and I have those on my wall, wins, all of that. Like it is definitely work. And a lot of like putting yourself out there and going after your dreams is mindset, is working on your mindset more than the strategy.
Yes, 100%. And we care. I think we think that people care way more about the things that we care about than they actually do, if that makes sense. I hope I didn't get really tongue-tied there, but like things like with our voices or how we look, or like ever since I started doing video, I noticed that like my eye does this weird like double blink thing, and I never noticed it before, but I'm like, okay, A, people don't really care, and B, the message that I'm talking about is so much more important than my little eye twitch that I have going on.
Nobody is picking up on your eye twitch. I promise. I haven't even noticed at all. We're doing video too. Haven't noticed at all. We are our toughest critics, right? We see things that nobody else sees. And again, it comes down to focusing on the message, right? Instead of focusing on how you look, how you sound, focus on what you're saying, right? Like what content, what message are you giving people? That is way, way, way more important than those other things, because nobody is noticing those things. It's so silly how we get hung up on those things, but it's true. Like I hear that all the time from my clients, same thing. I'm like, if only I had an Australian accent. Why don't I have an Australian accent? I could listen to myself all day, but like, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is more important than how I sound.
Yes. And I think it's so interesting when we're able to take our awareness to the fact that we're subconsciously maybe doing some of these things. Like when you said the one negative comment versus 20 positive comments, like I think about back when we were in school, and if we got a 98 on a test, the first thing we did was go and find that one question that we got wrong. And it's like, you got literally every other single question besides that one correct. And the one that you're gravitated towards, or the one that you're so focused on, is that one that you've got wrong. And once I was able to like make that shift, I was like, why do we do this? And like, it is just a mindset thing that we have around being perfect. And that translates in so much when it comes to starting your own business or putting yourself out there.
Yeah, it's so much programming that you have to undo and redo. Like, because if you're thinking about that, like when did that start? A lot of us started school when we were like 4 or 5. That started that long. We've had, a lot of us have had that programming longer than we have, been working on our mindset and reprogramming. So it takes time. I always say like starting a business takes time, changing your mindset takes time. Like anything worth doing, it does take time. So giving yourself some grace, right? And being compassionate towards yourself while you do that, because it definitely doesn't happen overnight. And like, I'm still working on, my mindset and my beliefs and changing that. So yeah, it's insane. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I would love to be able to, I guess, paint a picture too of the fact that like every time you level up or you grow or you sign a client or you gain a certain number of followers, would you say it's true that there are new things that pop up for you that maybe you're having either doubts about or you're fearful around starting something new? Like, does that ever go away?
That's such a great question. I don't think it goes away. Kind of like imposter syndrome, right? Like I don't think it goes away, because anytime you go to like a new level or you're trying something new, you're a beginner, and like I love learning, so I'm always learning something new. So I'm always a beginner, and I actually really like that feeling of trying something new and getting good at something. But I do think that you build up that confidence, because once you, like for me personally, like once I figured out how to build an online business, health coaching, like I knew that I could do it again, like with business coaching, so I had more confidence, but still things come up and they kind of like set you back. Like right now I'm currently dealing with like scaling, right? And it's just funny how the world works. I remember a few years ago, I saw an influencer talking about how, she was so upset that she couldn't get back to everybody who was reaching out to her. And I was like, that's such like a silly thing. Like that's like you're biggest problem. I know I'm really being honest. I know sometimes I can be judgmental. And I was like, that's your like biggest problem right now. And now I'm facing that, right? Like the other day I was like, I want to get back to everybody and I want to help everybody. And there's all of these great questions, but like I literally can't get to all of them. And it was like really stressing me out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening with my life? So I think like as you grow, like different issues come up, but I do think like you build up your confidence if you can celebrate and appreciate all of the things that have worked out for you. And that's something that I do a really good job of, like doing gratitude, writing down my wins, reading mindset books. Like I read mindset books every single day religiously. That will really help you. So it doesn't go away. There's always going to be new challenges and different issues that you're kind of having to overcome. Like being an entrepreneur, it's really like solving problems for yourself, for people, for your business. So that's always going to happen. But I do think it gets a little bit easier than when you're just starting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that too often we're comparing our chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 25 or whatever. And we think that they didn't go through the same things that we went through. And I know people are saying this all of the time now, but it's so true. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, both of these people have podcasts, or both of these people are coaches and they're already working with coaches, and like you're saying all of these things, the truth is that we've all gone through it. Even when you and I first started our podcasts, like we had the same fears that someone who's thinking about starting a podcast might have.
Yeah, I'm very honest. If you go to my Instagram and you read some of the posts, like I'm very honest about my journey. Like I started out with no audience, nobody would talk to me. I couldn't sell a $27 course. I would get crickets on everything. I ended up going into debt, $21,000 in debt. So definitely I started exactly where, a beginner starts. That's totally normal. I didn't have any like special connections. I didn't have any experience doing this. No entrepreneurs in my family. Nobody in my family graduated college. I was the first one to graduate college. So like literally, if you were just starting out, like have hope. I promise. Like I went from that to then I was selling $5,000 coaching packages as a health coach. I was able to quit my job, bring my husband on board, bring an assistant on board. So definitely everybody starts at the beginning, but I did the same thing. Like when I just started, I remember crying and being like, why isn't this happening faster for me? Why does everybody else have it figured out? Why is it so easy for all of them? But now I'm so grateful for that. I do think that we go through struggles and we go through challenges so that we can help other people. I think the reason I struggled with my health was so I could help other people with my health. I think the reason I struggled with my business was so I could help other coaches with their business. I know I would not be half the business coach I am today if I didn't have all of those struggles, right? If I didn't, have the crickets, right? Because if I didn't have the crickets, if all of a sudden I started my business and it was so great, then when my clients come to me and they're like, Sarah, nobody's talking to me, I don't know what to do. Like I would be like, I don't know, when I put something out, everybody talked to me, but I'm like, oh, I had that problem. I know how to overcome it. When they're like, I'm getting these pricing objections, I'm like, oh, I know what to do about that. Like I went through all of that so I can help others. So 100%, I totally agree with you. Like nobody starts from the top. We have to work our way up, and the journey might look different, but everybody is. I always say like, everybody you see who's super successful and has everything you want, like they've had their own challenges, their own struggles too. Like it is hard work for everybody. It just looks different.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. It looks different. And I always say too, like, if you want to see what my first posts were, like, go to the bottom of my Instagram. Like, I still have them there.
I love
And,
that you have that. A lot of people delete them.
yeah.
You'll see a lot of people will delete like their old posts because they don't want people to see, or they want it to look like, I just started and like, I have thousands of followers and I just started. But like, I love that. I did a video the other day where I posted like the very first video Peter and I did, and I called it cringeworthy because
Yep.
it is, but it's cringeworthy good because it shows like how far I've come, So I love that you have that. Yeah, scroll down, you can see the stuff. Like nobody starts out just like crushing it, especially on video. Those first videos, man, those are bad.
Yeah, I know. And it's so funny because anytime, I don't know if this is a strategy or not, or if this is just what I need to do to like give myself peace of mind or like feel related to or something. But anytime that I go on a new platform or start something new, like when I was doing this podcast, before I recorded my first episode, I went and I listened to all my favorite podcasts. I listened to their first episode. And I'm in the process of creating a YouTube channel now. And the people that I admire most, I went and watched their first videos. And I was like, okay, like they started with no equipment, or they started not really having an idea of what they wanted to talk about. Like it was kind of all over the place. And now they're super successful in it. And that kind of gives me hope. So again, I don't know if that's a strategy or not, but it might help you might make you feel a little bit better.
I like that you said that too, because I think that's a really good point for anybody who's listening and wants to get started and are thinking like, I can't start now because I'm not good enough. Like people who are already doing this work, they're going back and they want to see the beginning. They want to see beginners. And so that's like one thing I'm always telling my clients. And people who are like, oh, I need to get the certification, or I need to be perfect, or I have to have it all figured out before I start. Well, the problem with that is the sooner you build an audience and you start showing up, the sooner you'll grow and you'll get better. And so you're just, that was such a great example of saying like, I like seeing where people started. I like seeing the beginning, you know? So I'm always telling people like, bring people along with your journey. One thing that I'm doing right now is I just started TikTok. It makes me feel so freaking old. I'm 32. I'm not that old. I don't feel 32. I'm not that old. But it literally makes me feel like a grandma. Like it is so confusing to my brain. But I'm doing it and I'm showing up and I'm sharing, and my videos are terrible. Like they are not good. They are nowhere near as good as the content I'm putting out on Instagram or my podcast, but like I'm trying, and I like that feeling because it helps me like relate to my clients who are just starting out. And I like to know like that beginning feeling, that newness, you know, and sharing it and saying like, hey, I'm just starting out too in certain areas.
Yes. And everyone that I mean, like we can use like YouTube or podcast or TikTok, for example, like any video or episode or post that you make, the next one is just going to be one step ahead of that. And we learn so much, but the only way we could ever learn is if we try things, if we commit to putting ourselves out there, if we can work through that fear, and then we know, okay, like, wow, the audio was actually not great in that last video. How can I make it a little bit better? Or, oh, I realized I was a little out of focus here. How can I make that better for the next time? But it's not to say that you have to make sure you have all of that ahead of time, because there's no way that you'll know if your audio sounds like shit if you're not recording.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You learn so much. I feel like the reason that I have so much content and so many ideas and courses and programs is just from doing it, right? I always say like a lot of my clients, most of my clients are health coaches, and they want to create courses and, you know, different things. And I always say like, start by working with people one-on-one, because then from that you learn what everybody's asking you about, and then you can put that into a course that can become really great content, right? But if you never put yourself out there, if you never do the video, you never do the podcast, you never coach somebody, you never work with somebody, you're not going to have that knowledge that comes from it. So many ideas come from actually doing the work.
Yes. Okay, so when you were trying to sell your $27, is that what you said? When you were trying to sell that and it wasn't working, did you have like an aha moment where you were like, okay, something needs to switch? Or did something happen along the process where you were like able to make that shift, or was it gradual?
So it did not click for me for a very long time. For a very long time, we purchased a lot of courses and masterminds and join membership sites, like trying to figure out like, how do I do this business thing? Nothing clicked. It was just like, looking back, I had no niche. I didn't know what I was doing. I was creating stuff without talking to people. Like I was just in my own bubble of like, my stuff is so great. Why doesn't anybody want this? Like, what's wrong with them? Like not taking any responsibility for myself. Right. And so I just struggled so much over and over and over again. It's really sad looking back on it, until eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go back to working for somebody else. I'm going to have to think of a new job. Like, what am I going to do with my life? Like crying on the floor, eating dairy-free ice cream. And I kind of like do this thing sometimes where I get very dramatic. And so I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? You know, my big plan, it's not working out. But then it's like, and I kind of feel sorry for myself for like 5 seconds. And then I'm like, okay, now I need to figure this out. Right. So then I was like, okay, I need to hire a business coach, because other people obviously have figured this out, right? Obviously, if other people can do it, I can do it too, but what I'm doing right now is not working and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being stuck. I'm tired of being in the same position year after year. And so I'm going to get some help. So I hired a business coach and she was just like, Sarah, what are you trying to say? You're not saying it at all. Like, what are you trying to build? Does anybody even want that? Like, nobody wants that. Why are you doing that? And so it was kind of like all the aha moments. And that's why I'm so big. Sometimes it can feel like, oh, you're just saying hire a business coach because you're a business coach and you want, people to hire you. But that's not it. I always tell people, like, when they're on discovery calls with me, I always say, like, if you want to work with me, awesome, great. I would love it, if they're a good fit. But I'm like, at the end of the day, hire somebody, hire some help, because where you're at right now, it's really hard to see outside of our experience and what we've been through. Having somebody who knows what they're doing, who has done it before, to come in and be like, hey, you're actually not saying what you think you're saying here, or it's not clear, right? Or you don't have a niche, is really powerful. So for me, that's what it took. It took having somebody else outside of my husband, because although Peter is great and I love him, like, he had never done it before either. We both went to college, got degrees in different fields than what we're doing. So we'd never built an online business before. So we needed to see and work with somebody who had done it before.
Okay, so I had a similar experience when I hired my first business coach. And I think the reason that it, like, I say the same thing, like, you should hire a business coach, is not because I'm also a coach, but because I was doing the same thing where I was talking to my boyfriend. And honestly, I would be disappointed if he didn't say what I wanted him to
Oh,
say.
interesting.
Or I would go to my friends and they would be like, yeah, that's a great idea. That's awesome. Yeah, do that. And like, they were doing that because they were trying to support me and make me feel better. And
Right.
they just didn't have the experience or the expertise. And I think that was a huge shift for me as well. And I do love your story. And I think that's super relatable, because for me, like, when I first started, I had a very similar journey to an extent. And I don't think that there's anything like wrong with having a journey like that. I think that's how a lot of people start, right? But if there was any advice you could give to someone, maybe to, like, I don't want to say that they're going to avoid it in general, because I think everyone's going to go through that, but anything that you learned along the way that would have maybe fast tracked it or made you a little bit more clear.
Yes, this is what I share all of the time. I always say, like, to all of my Instagram followers, my community, I'm always like, I share all of this stuff because I want you guys to be way more successful than I was with my health coaching business, right? I want you guys to get there faster. And my clients they're getting there way faster than I was. So I would say, besides hiring a coach, getting help, don't feel any shame. I think a lot of times, like, I know for me, I was like, I put myself through college. Like, I am resourceful. I'm hardworking. I should be able to figure this out. Like, setting your ego aside, getting help. The smartest people in the world, they get help. There's no shame in it. I would say, like, that is huge. Another thing would be like mindset. Like, I am so serious. Like, a big part of having success online is your confidence in yourself, right? If you can show up and sell something, like, and I don't mean like sell a program, like sell yourself, talk about how you can help people with confidence. That is so attractive and that will pull your people to you. So do whatever you have to do to feel really confident, right? So for me, that looks like mindset books. Two of my favorites, one of them, and some people like laugh at me because I share this one, but one of them is The Success Principles, and it's by Jack Canfield, who wrote the Chicken Soup books. His book, have you read The Success Principles? It's so good. It's really long. There's like a lot of principles he goes over, but it's so good. And one of the principles is leave the ain't it awful club, as he calls it. And so it's like the people who just complain about everything, whine about everything. He's like, take full responsibility for your life, right? For everything that's going on. Get rid of everybody who complains, blames, and is just in that mindset. And so that was huge for me. And then I also really like the 4 Agreements. That's another like really like easy, good read. So that's another thing, like work on your mindset, work on your confidence, do whatever you have to do to feel really good about what you have to offer. Get rid of people who put you down, don't pay attention to everybody else's journey. Kind of like you were saying, like a lot of us compare ourselves to, where people are at like 5 years in, not their beginning. So make sure you're not doing that. That can really bring you down. They say comparison is the thief of joy. And that is so true. I believe that 100%. Anytime I'm comparing myself to somebody else on Instagram, I feel like crap, right? So do whatever you can so you don't feel like crap. So that's another thing. Get help, work on your mindset and your confidence. And then like, if we're getting like really businessy and specific, like pick one problem, one thing that you can solve for people and like master that instead of trying to do all of the things. I remember when I first started out, I was like, I'm going to help people with everything, like all of their health issues. You know, I can help them with their digestion and their energy and their skin. Just pick one thing and work on that for a while and then move on to something else. I think so many of us, we're multi-passionate, which is awesome and great. And I always tell my clients, like, you can pivot, you can change like I do, you know, like watch me, I'm always changing and doing different things, but stick with something until you get some results with it. And then when, you know, you've had results, you're tired, you want to move on, but just know it does take longer than you think. With online business, with creating a business in general, like it's going to take longer than you think. So I would say start now, start early, and give yourself more time. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like when I first started my business, there were a lot of entrepreneurs in the game, and now a lot of them aren't doing it anymore, which is fine for whatever reason. But I do think a lot of people give up too soon, or they quit too soon, or they don't get help and they burn themselves out. So just know that it does take longer probably than you think it's going to take. So just having that mindset of like, you know, it's not an overnight, there's no such thing as overnight success.
Yes, that's so true. And I think we get so overwhelmed with the end result that we're looking for, or we think that we should have, and that can stop us in and of itself. And when we start looking at like, okay, what can I do today to move me forward one step? I think that's huge. And I was also going to say, as far as like, at least for me, I don't want to put this on anyone else's experience, but my experience when I very first started, I was like, okay, I want to start an online business so I can leave my full-time job and I can do this on my own. How am I going to invest in a business coach that's like thousands of dollars? And that was a really big mindset block that I had. And I was going to say, like, the things you can start doing now is working on reading those books that are at a low price point, listening to the podcast episodes, start doing research, maybe you enroll in something smaller, but it's that, like we said before, start doing things, and that confidence will layer up. And then you're going to get to a point where you're like, I've consumed all of the free content that I can. Or you're going to be like, okay, this is kind of not fluffy stuff, but like, I'm ready for someone to hop into my business or hop into my mind, like, and help me along the way. And you can ride out that free stuff, or like, I'm going to learn it all myself. You can ride that out and it might work for you. Or you might be, like you said, you might get burnt out. And that's my biggest thing that I don't want my clients to ever feel is burnt out by trying to consume too many free things, or just trying to do too many different things rather than focusing on one or two things that are going to move the needle for you.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good because I definitely binged on all the YouTube videos and all the podcasts. I remember I quit my job before my husband did, and you know, like everybody has to figure out when is a good time to quit, when isn't. I definitely quit too soon. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was like still trying to figure it out. But I was like, I'm done with my job. I ended up having to go back and get another job. And I remember like he would come home from work and I'd be like, I have it figured out. I watched all of these videos. This is what we're going to do. This is my new genius plan, you know? So there's a lot of free content. I always try to give like really great, like action packed, like free stuff. But a lot of times, like you were saying, there are some like missing pieces, or like we're in our own way. Like for me, like I was in my own way 100%. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I wasn't doing that. So yeah, there's a lot of free stuff. And like you said, building up your confidence, you know, by just getting started, you kind of build up your confidence. So would you say that's what happened for you when you were like, okay, how am I going to invest in a business coach? You know, did you start kind of consuming some of the free stuff and the content and like working on your mindset? And then you were like, okay, now I'm ready for a business coach, or what was that process like for you?
I think I've always been interested in personal development and mindset books and stuff like that. But for me, and this is why I preach so hard on this, is because I felt like I hit rock bottom as far as like my happiness in life and where I was and what I was doing and what it felt like to go to work every day and come home from work, and how I was bringing that energy into my relationships with my family and my friends and my boyfriend. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. If it's going to cost me thousands of dollars to get out of this and make me show up and get really clear on what it is that I want to do, I'm going to do it. And it was a decision that I made, and I will 100% say that it was worth it. And like, I have continued to invest in coaches and courses and programs and stuff like that. And I also think it really depends on the person too, and how they kind of trying to think of the word that I want to say, how they like respond to certain things or the psychology behind it. But for me, I did the downloading of all the freebies and they sat in my email list,
Mm,
in my inbox, and were never opened. When I
yeah.
invested $5,000 in a business coach, I was like, okay, what do I do? Like the
Yeah.
second I signed up, and I was like, just give me homework. Where should I go? And I was
Yeah.
like, that's what made me show up. So that's kind of, I guess, my experience when it came to investing in a business coach for the first time.
I love that. We're very similar. I remember my first business coach. I was like, okay, I did all the homework. What else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? I think one thing for me too, like I definitely like my mindset and my money mindset was nowhere near where it is now. But one thing like I will say, if you have been downloading all of the free stuff and like you're like, I'm ready to invest in a coach, but or just, you know, a mindset coach, whatever, somebody like you said to get inside of your business and see, but you're like, I don't have the money, like being resourceful is such a gift. That is something that because I was the same way. Like I said, like Peter and I, we were in debt when we started our business. We definitely didn't have the money to invest. And I literally got so resourceful. I sold my car. I remember I did cold calling to farms to get like free produce delivered. When we started our business, I was like, I am not giving up my lifestyle. And not that my lifestyle is like this fancy lifestyle, but like organic food, you know, like shopping at the health food store. Like those are the things that I was like, I'm keeping those. So I got super resourceful. And so it's just so amazing, like what you can achieve when you really want something, right? Like you were saying, like your happiness was at stake. Like if your happiness is at stake, if like this is your dream, like get creative because you can make things happen. You'd be really surprised what people will say yes to and how you can manifest money, come up with money when you really want something. So don't let that stop you.
Oh, I love that about being resourceful. And also I think there is kind of a stigma that people feel like that this part needs to be like the beginning stages needs to be so difficult, or it
Mm,
needs to be like you're not making any money to get started, or it needs to be you're selling everything in your home and you can't do the things that you want to do or go out. And I personally just I don't want to be naive to other people's
mhm,
circumstances. However, it's a belief that I have that like, no, I was the same way. Like I didn't want to give up my eyelash extensions.
mhm.
So I found a way to make enough money to be able to support that thing that I wanted. However, some people are like, okay, I don't need that. That's where I can cut a
Right.
cost. But for me,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't really like drinking. So why would I like when I go out to a bar, I'll just get water instead. Like I
Yeah.
found different things to cut out compared to other people.
I love that. And I think that's so true. Like I talk about my journey. It was a struggle, right? Like starting my business, it was a struggle. But a lot of my clients, like it's not a struggle. And I have noticed like everybody's journey is different. And there's a reason why some people take off faster than others. But I have noticed that my clients who come to me with a really strong mindset, it's a lot easier for them. Like they've already been doing the mindset work, their business growth is a lot faster. It's a lot easier than those who are starting with like really low confidence, haven't done any mindset work, you know, believe that they're not worthy. So doing the mindset work really pays off.
Yes, and I think that's honestly the number one part in being a business owner or putting yourself out there or starting something new, because you will never understand the technical side of things, or you will never find the time to learn how to do something, or sit down and consume all of the content for your certification or your schooling or whatever if you don't have the mindset that says I can do this, or I'm going to learn how to do this. But you have to make that commitment to yourself within your mindset first.
Yeah, 100%, 100% with you.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a question that I ask all of my podcast guests, and it's what is something that you've recently said yes to, or what is something that you recently said no to that has felt really aligned and you felt really confident about?
I love that question. So for me, it's looked like reestablishing my boundaries with like we're recording this like during quarantine and my boundaries. normally I'm pretty good about them, but lately they've just been very loose in terms of when I'm on my phone, like answering DMs and questions and just like helping at all hours, right? With business, there's always stuff that comes up. There's always stuff to be done. I always say like your list is never going to end. So just remember that's what tomorrow is for. But being at home so much, I kind of was like, oh, I'll just work a little bit. I'll just work a little bit. And it looked like a lot of screen time. Late nights, early mornings. And so I think it was 2 weeks ago now, I was like, no more, like reestablishing boundaries, like with my clients, with my community, with myself, right? With my husband. And that like, it's really hard for me still because I definitely have this, like, I want to please, mentality. I want to help people. I want to be good enough. I want to prove my worth. Still working on it, work in progress. And so for me, it's sometimes really hard to like say no and like reestablish those boundaries. But that was one thing, like I did notice like a little bit of pushback from people in my life, but I felt really confident in it because I know that it's coming from a good place and it's going to allow me to show up better for myself, for others. And so that felt, I was like, oh, a little pushback, but I actually felt really good and confident about it because I knew that it was the right decision for everybody involved.
Yeah, I love that. So is there anything else that you want to say to the listeners as far as like getting started or feeling like very overwhelmed with even where to start? Because I know a lot of them are probably going to be feeling that way as we did when we first started.
Yeah, I would say just start with your journey and your story and don't be afraid to be yourself. Literally just start showing up because what you'll find is you'll find that you're very similar to the people who are following you, who are watching you, who want to learn from you. Like we all have so much more in common than we think, but so many of us don't share that part of us. So if there's something that you've been wanting to share, if there's something that you've overcome, that you've worked through, like don't be afraid to put that out there and share a little bit. Obviously, everybody's vulnerability factor or level is a little bit different. So share whatever's comfortable for you. The more you share, the more you'll see it's easier and it's not so bad and you'll get comfortable. But definitely I would start there. Start with like what you've been through, what you want to help people with, and just kind of get your feet wet because that will build up the confidence. And I think I gave you a link for a social media training. And so in that, I really teach you like how to start sharing your story, how to share your message in a way that helps other people. So if you're like, I want to start a business, I want to show up online, I want to do YouTube or a podcast or whatever it is, that really will help you with any area. I give you kind of like some content prompts to really get the juices flowing.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. So that will be in the show notes for you guys so you can download it. But Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I loved this episode so much. And it's a good reminder for me too, even having this conversation. Because like we said, I think we all go through this in all parts of our journey. So tell everyone where they can find you and if like how they can work with you if they are a health coach and all that stuff.
Yeah, right now I've really been loving Instagram. So come over there. Don't come to TikTok. It's not ready for you guys yet. If you want to, you can, but it's just not ready yet. So I'm just Sarah_Hagstrom on Instagram. And then I have a podcast too, which I need to have you on 100% now. That's called Why Can't I? Very, very similar in terms of topics, just kind of like overcoming limiting beliefs and doing what you really want to do with your life because why can't you?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So if you guys like this episode, be sure to go check out Sarah's podcast. And then if you want, screenshot this and post it on your Instagram stories and tag us because I'm sure Sarah would love to come say hi. And I would love to as well and say thank you for listening and just see if there's any other questions that we can help answer for you guys.